Hey everyone, it's Chris from the Ask AI nonprofit. Here are my 8 hot button issues in artificial intelligence to look out for in 2024. So my first issue is AI versus copyright. We all by now are pretty familiar that large language models created themselves by ingesting basically the entire internet. And that included all sorts of copyrighted materials and information and documents. And I guess it's fair to say that the chickens are starting to come home to roost. Starting last year in 2023, we saw a trickle of lawsuits start to be filed. And in January of 2024, we saw the New York Times, one of the world's most significant publishers, file their own lawsuit against ChatGPT and OpenAI. And we'll see if that becomes a foundational case on how the owners of intellectual property and copyrighted materials can defend themselves against commercial use by large language models and generative AI tools. One to watch for sure. AI versus data ownership. There's an old expression that if feces was worth anything, poor people would be born without rear ends. There's some sort of corollary here to what's happening with personal information, which is that sure, there's been value in obtaining other people's information for some time, particularly in marketing and advertising. But what we saw in 2023 is the increased aggregation and scale of such operations of data collection have actually proved to be billion or multi-billion dollar business models, most notably by OpenAI. Now, at the same time as this awareness of the value of the information is happening, there's also going to be more and more people after it. Look at the opening of the GPT marketplace. This is going to be a home for thousands, potentially millions of chatbot developers who are all going to be requiring information to provide a unique experience for their users, paid or otherwise. And so I think while there's an increased recognition of the value of our information, there's also an increased pull for more and more of it to be shared. This tension is going to be one to watch. Where it ends up, I hope, is with increased data ownership enshrined in laws and regulations that treat data a little bit more like property. That's not a panacea. It's not the perfect solution, but I think that's where we're headed this year. Okay, regulatory turf wars. Well, there's been quite a few announcements from international and national bodies about the regulations around artificial intelligence and frameworks. A lot of these are voluntary and they're not necessarily completely enforceable just yet, or they're not enshrined in actual laws, criminal or otherwise. It may seem like we're taking a very linear approach and a steady march towards greater and greater control of artificial intelligence. What I'm seeing, for example, in my home country of Canada is that there's regional or provincial privacy offices and commissioners. They're putting in place their own recommendations. There's national legislators that are putting in draft regulations. There's also professional bodies that are creating guidelines and recommendations around the use of artificial intelligence, particularly in the workplace. So the observation here is look for more regulatory confusion before you get regulatory simplification. Proprietary AI versus open source AI. There are many industries that stand to benefit from the intelligence, automations, capabilities that AI will be able to bring them. But at the same time, they're regulatorily prevented from actually engaging with things like large language models, which requires a level of data sharing. And think of that as sending copies to a third-party organization. So when you think about healthcare or financial services, these types of organizations will find it difficult, if not impossible, from a regulatory and compliance point of view, to leverage proprietary AI models, such as those owned by a profit-driven corporation, such as Microsoft and OpenAI. So then you look at open source models as an alternative to proprietary AI. And, those have some great advantages. Generally, there's more control over how they're deployed. They can be deployed on-prems. And while there are locally deployable versions like ChatGPT Enterprise, those are really expensive and definitely not affordable by every healthcare organization or every financial services organization in the world. So you have this tension between industries that stand to benefit from AI and the type of AI solution that they're actually able to use. And so this is definitely one to watch out for. There's all sorts of arguments on both sides. For example, Facebook seems to be highly committed to an open source future for AI, whereas other tech giants decidedly are not. This debate really overlaps with the other hot button issues in copyright and in data ownership. So watch out for that. AI and the disruption of education is a hot button issue I've been very interested in for some time. It's been in quite a few news cycles recently on how students are using generative AI tools to do their homework and turn in papers. Even teachers are using it to plan courses and mark papers and things like that. For a student in K-12, should we be trying to stamp out their use of generative AI tools, or should we be repositioning education so that they see it as an always-on 24/7 multilingual digital tutor? From the point of view of teachers, how can we support them in discovering ways to use digital technology, most notably cell phones? And they're going to have to also rethink homework. It's more or less inevitable that the generative AI tools available to students will be utilized. So do we look for maybe nano testing in real time in the classroom through a mobile device as an alternative, for example? That would be really interesting. And at the level of higher education, something to look out for is new thinking and guidelines around academic integrity and attribution. If AI model makes a discovery under the watch of an academic, who gets the credit? Maybe there's some sort of split attribution. Personally, I don't think we're seeing nearly enough news and coverage around this subject. But Ask AI, we did a great episode with Dr. Christian Blouin of Dalhousie University, who addresses this very topic. So I encourage you to check out our podcast and check out that interview in particular. AI and autonomous warfare is one of those hot button issues, which I think has the potential to eclipse almost all the others I've mentioned in this post. This is literally life and death and concerns the rules of war and how we're going to utilize this technology in conflict. And I think we can only really focus on the realm of the possible. I'm not talking here about terrorist groups or private group use of AI technology to undertake military or other types of activities that end up in people dying. I'm talking about state-sponsored warfare, which has rules, is quote unquote legal. There have been some changes to the policies of ChatGPT, for example, that remove the mention of military and weapons development from their terms of use. That's concerning to me. The Ukraine-Russia war in particular has proven that the future of warfare is increasingly automated. The use of drones has been enormous. There's been development of weapons that are using onboard AI. That means there's not necessarily a link between the weapon and the operator. And so who's pulling the trigger? Fully autonomous weapons are a huge concern and something I think we all need to be looking out for. And I really encourage more coverage of this area by media, bloggers, podcasters, and others, because as I say, I don't know that there's a more important issue in artificial intelligence to watch out for this year. Artificial intelligence and the increased automation of white-collar work is definitely going to be one to watch out for in 2024 and beyond. There are two sides to technological innovation. One says that it makes more jobs than it takes away, and that has historically been true for the most part. But I think what we're seeing here is possibly an inflection point in history where there's real potential for a technology to take away more jobs than it produces. And something to look out for in this area is the potential increasing unionization of the office towers that have so long remained separate from the unionized movement. Is that going to happen? When you look to the recent activities of the Hollywood screenwriters who embedded clauses about ownership of their work and the use of artificial intelligence and generative AI in their collective bargaining agreement, I think that's just a tip of the iceberg that indicate where all this might go. So collaborative intelligence versus collective intelligence. This is a little bit more esoteric than some of the other issues, but when we think about the nature of intelligence itself, I often quote the example of the Borg ship in the Star Trek TV series. That was an example of collective intelligence, whereby all sources of intelligence were subsumed and absorbed by a central source of intelligence, and then they gave up their autonomy in the process. To me, that's a very bad approach to developing intelligence. The alternative to collective AI or collective intelligence is collaborative intelligence. And this is something I actually do in my day job, which is working on an enterprise data collaboration platform. The bottom line is about control. So if I want to contribute my personal information towards the development of a large language model, for example, I should be able to revoke that information as well. And I should be able to control what aspects of a large language model my information can contribute toward. And so it's this issue of control that's central to collaboration. And I think it's definitely going to be one to look out for, particularly amongst AI developers as they shift from scraping the internet and copying information to train their AI models to one where they're going to openly and transparently work in collaboration with data owners. So there you have it, my 8 hot button issues in artificial intelligence to look out for this year. I hope you found it useful. There's a blog post behind this video that has more information about these issues, as well as links to further reading. I encourage you to check that out. And while you're at our website, which can be found at askai.org, there is a subscribe button at the top of the page. Don't forget to click that, where you can easily join our newsletter, which provides a monthly update of AI news and thought leaders and content and events and all sorts of good stuff, as well as join our podcast, which features interviews with thought leaders that are shaping artificial intelligence in Canada and beyond. It's a really excellent series. We're now in full swing of series 5. So it's great content, and you can listen to it on demand on your phone, or you can check it out on YouTube as well. So take care and have a great 2024.